Good morning. Good morning. Well, I get the date time right. Good evening. Welcome to the Dialogue with Dozie. You got your boy here. My special guest will be on shortly. She's a very special guest. You've been seeing the poster. You see who she is. I'm gonna let her introduce herself in just a second. Just want to look back over what has been a great month of celebration here on the Dialogue of Black History. We've done it many ways, many different ways over the 4 years that we are been in existence. Speaking of 4 years, we are just about 2 months away from a celebration of 4 years of Dialogue with Dozie. That's pretty awesome, and we're pretty excited about it. And so 4 years. 4 years ago, one night I picked up a camera and was in my little man cave, as most of us were during the pandemic. And I just picked up the camera and started talking sports and talking the George Floyd controversy and talking the impending presidential election. And I said, hey guys, if you want me to, I'll come back same time next week. And there was an overwhelming request for that, because that was during the days when we were all at the house and we were all doing a lot of content live. I had been seeing people do that, and I just tried it. I guess I never looked at myself and said, being live on Facebook. But with the overwhelming response, and for the next couple of weeks, you guys were here with me, and we continued on. And then my daughter, Madam Producer, Go Giga Creations, More Go Giga, she came on and took us on as clients. And I can't tell you how grateful for the professional presentation that they do for us, and the way they can make us look, and just an all-out presentation. We're grateful. So 4 years later, Dialogue with Dozie is still on the air. We enjoy and appreciate coming here on Monday nights, and we take this Black History Month, African American History Month, so serious. It gives us a forum to talk about ourselves and concerns and needs of our community, and particularly here in our state of Florida, where we are fighting to maintain Black history in the schools. That was not an issue this time last year, or no one even thought that it would be an issue this time 2 years ago. And all of a sudden, this let's say, I can't call him a clown, but Governor Despicable ends the teaching of Black history, and he says anything that makes other people feel bad. But what about us? How do we feel? How does he think we feel, having gone through the turmoil of everything that we've gone through? I'm going to talk a little later about just everything that we have endured. And how does he think we feel? That's just a question that it brings to mind when I start thinking about him banning Black history. My guest is going to talk about some of the things that we're doing in our state to combat taking Black history out of the schools. And my guest is also going to talk about a national forum, because this is the way this works. In in all of the southern states or in all of the red states, when one ridiculous thing happens, another one happens. If it happens in Florida, it'll be proposed in Alabama next month. If it emanated in Mississippi, it'll be proposed in Georgia tomorrow. And all of these states, from having it where you can't bring a chair for somebody waiting in a long line at the polls, to where you can't bring them water. Please, somebody tell me why. Just how I'm interested to know, how did they justify it. I want to know how they justified it. I want to know what reasons they gave to stop such simple things as that. We know the overall reason behind it. Of course, it is to impede Black folks from voting. They're trying to do everything that makes it more difficult for us to vote, particularly in Georgia, where we have gained a tremendous base, and where we put the United States senators, a Jewish brother and an African American in the Senate, albeit close elections. They have done it nonetheless. And so we're just wondering, how is it that they justify this? So anyway, no matter what they do, we're going to combat it. We're going to overcome it. We're going to fight through it. We're going to win victory over it. And that's where we are, and that's just what we're going to do. So we're going to keep fighting. And my guess is in 1 second, you're going to hear some of the things that we are in fact doing. Let me tell you what we've done this year during Black History Month. Of course, we always do a Black History Spotlight. We always do a Black History Spotlight at the midway point, where we normally do the segments, a shout out, or Are You Serious, or Dang Dog. We put those to the side during Black History Month, and we do a shout out. We shout out Black achievers, and that's what we spend our time doing during this season. So we started out the first Monday night in Black History Month. I gave an overall, and it got a lot of good dialogue from you guys, and I always appreciate the dialogue. Always appreciate the feedback from you on the chat. My brother is not with us tonight. He usually handles that. So if you see me reaching up and squinting, I'm trying to see what you are saying so that I can give it an adequate response. And that's how we treat the chat. And we just really appreciate Mac and Bernard and all you guys who are with us. Fern is in town. All you guys who are normally with us. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute also. So I started out by just giving an overall viewpoint of in history and background of Black history. And let me tell you, the guests are going to talk about it more, but never before has it been more needed than it is right now in our state and other states that are going to duplicate DeSantis's edict. That's what I call it. That is wiped out in our state. So the first week we started out talking about the history, the genesis of Black history, how we celebrated it, where it emanated from. We called Dr. Carter G. Woodson the father of Black history because he was the one who initiated it. I did not know, being a child of the 60s, Kent State University in Ohio is mainly known for the place where the tragedy took place during the Vietnam protests, but it was also the one that expanded what was Black History Week to Black History Month, and it was celebrated wholeheartedly and strongly. And I was just so excited about that. That was Kent State University, and we talked about how it has grown and become a regular thing that we do. Now, of course, this is a leap year, so we got 29 days of celebration of Black history this month, but normally February is indeed, and it's still the shortest month of the year, and that's by design. That's not by accident. That's done on purpose, and as it is, it just makes it all the more reason that we need to celebrate our history on our own. We can't leave it to others. And so we celebrate it throughout the year. For instance, lift every voice and sing. Most of us sing it during the 4 months of February, and then we followed our way into February again. Well, let's let the dominant culture dictate that to us. And the Black church is the one place, and my guest is going to talk more about the Black church, the Black community, how we're going to propagate the teaching of Black history. These are places that are independent and they move on their own. So I'm covenanting that we're going to do Black history. We're going to sing. Lift every voice and sing at least once a quarter, maybe once a month. I get with some of the planners, but at least once a quarter, we're going to sing it reverently. And it is now, it is a song that's being sung also at the Super Bowl. And as America is coming around there, we enlighten manner. So the first week we talked about Black history, the foundation of it, the perpetuation of it, and the status of it now. And then the second week I had doctors Ronnie and Glenise Glover, and we talked about how Black history, the music, they're both accomplished musicians and vocalists, and we talked about how the music has emanated throughout our history and what it has meant to us and the power of it, and we spent a great hour just discussing that, and we talked a little bit about how the marriage of the sacred and the secular, because they're both pastors, and so we talked about how the Black history. In Black history, how music emanated from the church, and most genres of music that we appreciate as a culture now did, in fact. Sorry about the noise in the background. We talked about how it emanated from the Black church. We talked about how it emanated from the Black church, and we went more into that discussion that I had planned to. It became kind of a secular against sacred music. We talked about how some of our artists today, how artists today have been so innovative, and sometimes it's hard splitting the line between the music and the praise and so forth, and the praise methods. But it was a very fulfilling, powerful discussion. And then on last Monday night, I was blessed beyond measure to have with me Dr. Reginald Terry. We got a lot of doctors now, but Dr. Terry is an accomplished preacher, singer. I think he does a little music, and he's a great thinker. He's known nationwide for his abilities and his accomplishments. And we talked about the relevance of the Black church to our culture. And I just have a profound appreciation for how he laid the foundation, and how he said that there really should be no discussion about a relevance of a Black church in today's society, in a society where attacks have come back on us, and how the church has always, not only from a theological or a spiritual point, has been the place that has been a blessing to us through the hard times that we had to endure, but how the Black church has also been not only the spiritual place, but it's been the place where we've done our planning and our organizing, where protest movements came out of the civil rights movement, birthed out of the Black church. And so he said that it's almost blasphemy to say that we're having a discussion about the relevance of the Black church. And so we had an awesome discussion with him. Go back and look at those shows either on Facebook or YouTube Live, and tell me what you think about the way this state, particularly for Floridians, where we're already beginning to feel the impact, where teachers are fretful, they're scared to even mention those two words, Black history. They're scared to even mention the state system, the university system has been assaulted. It has been overtaken by this extreme MAGA agenda, and the people who sets forth policies for them, and tenured, long-standing tenured professors, well-renowned professors, are at a point where they don't even know they're afraid to even to talk about any accomplishment or any historical factor that emanated from a Black perspective. And I say this, and it's all right. You know, in mainstream TV, you have one network that's extreme left. I'm looking at it. I know I got remember those cameras gonna come different. One is extremely is tilted to the left. That's MSNBC. One is falsely, with all the falsehoods, tilted to the right. That's Fox News. And then CNN seems to be a little, it leans left, but it's a little bit more down the middle. And somebody said that, remember the days of Walter Cronkite when he just gave the news, it had no slant. Well, in life, like everything else, we grow, we morph, we evolve. And that's how we have grown. That's how we morph. That's how we evolve. With the advent of cable and cable news networks, people's perspectives have become a part of it. And that's all right, because it gives those of us who want to listen to MSNBC, it gives us an opportunity to lean and hear that perspective. And those who want to listen to Fox News and the lies that they propagate over there, gives you a chance. And so as our show has morphed over the years, we've lost some good friends, some loyal viewers. We've lost some great guests that would come on. And I think, you know, some of them don't want to be identified with the show. That's probably, I would like to think that we're down the middle, that we speak the truth, but we are going to speak truth to power. That's if we can't do that, my dad would always remind us that there's an edict that says, to thine own self be true. And if we can't be true to ourselves, like the song say, true to our God, true to our native land, if we can't do that, then we are indeed we're not being the people that we've been called to be. And as leaders, I think we've got to do that. We can't stand by to every tool that has been given to us. So I guess we're going to come back and talk about the toolbox that makes it possible to offset some of the victories that we've won. And listen, when I talk about victories being won, nobody is looking to one up another segment of the culture. We just want an even playing field. That's all we want, is an even playing field. So we've lost affirmative action, this court. So as I go around this state and talk to individuals about voting and the importance of voting, nothing can be more nauseating than to hear particularly a young person, a high school student, say, why vote? What's the purpose of voting? They're going to do what they want to do anyway. Well, if you got the numbers, the quote unquote, they can't do what they want to do. The they become the we when we have the numbers. And so one of the utter catastrophes that occurred out of the 2016 election is that it gave Donald Trump an opportunity to stake the court. Now, you may not remember, but the court was teetering on it was 4-4, and one justice died and another retired. And Barack Obama had the opportunity to select the next justice that would have tilted the court towards a more, I don't want to say liberal orientation, that's what the right would call it, but at least a more fairer orientation, that it wouldn't be stacked with only right-wing perspectives. And when Mitch McConnell, the then Senate president, the Republican leader, prevented Barack Obama from appointing Merrick Garland, who is now, he selected Merrick Garland, who is now the Attorney General. President Biden made him the Attorney General, and it prevented him from he prevented him from a vote coming up in the U.S. Senate to accept, to vote up or down on Merrick Garland as the new Supreme Court justice, which would have tilted it, we like to say, to a more fair perspective. He said, we're waiting for the presidential election, which at that point, it was 9 months away. Nobody in their right mind could have ever predicted that Donald Trump would have won the election. But one of the consequences of it is that he tilted the court, and even with a court that has a 5-4 majority, one way or another, there are some fringe justices that may vote the middle of the road, quote unquote. They may vote left, they may vote right. Whenever they tried to abolish Obamacare, Justice Roberts, who is the head of the court, he is a Bush appointee. He's the head, he's the chief justice. He always voted to maintain Obamacare. So if it's a 5-4 tilt one way or the other, you always have an opportunity to bring one person over that'll change the that won't go with the flow. And so it's almost like a coin flip as to who would where the court where the vote would land. But when it's 6-2, 6-3, or 7-2, which is just about where we are now, because the consequences of that election is that Donald Trump went ahead and that what should have been Merrick Garland, that selection went to another person, and then 2 other appointees were made during Trump's 4-year tenure in the presidency. And of course, Congress passed them. And so we're living with a court that probably the balance of my lifetime will never, ever again, in my lifetime, will never be a fair. The first thing they did was voted out Roe versus Wade. Now, as a preacher, as a person of faith, I have my own theological beliefs about that topic, and maybe one day we'll bring it on and discuss it. But it was a 50-year law in this country, and that was immediately voted out. And like I was saying, that law I'm mixed on as far as the law. I'm very clear on where I feel about the. I'm very clear about where I feel about it as something that happens, but I'm open-minded about it legally and that kind of stuff. So that's what happens in 3 years. In 4 years, he changed the legal arguments. So affirmative action has been downgraded. All of these things have been wiped away. And you say it doesn't matter how we vote? Wow. Please don't think that. That's a tragedy when you think of the history and you think of all that our forefathers have endured. That's almost like shameful to ever say that's it doesn't matter. So again, last week we discussed the relevance of the Black church, or the power of the Black church in the context of our history, and even not only in the context of our history, but also contemporarily. We talked about the power of it. And of course, the church is something we're going to talk about again, because I think we're kind of seeing a different church post-pandemically as a mainstream. We're seeing some things, but as a whole, as a mainstream, we're seeing some changes. And so we just want to we want to look and talk more about that in the future. My guest is here, and we're just about ready to bring our guests on. And in 1 second, you're going to see how we're going to do that. I'm excited tonight about our spotlight in Black history, and we're going to talk more about that person also in just a matter of seconds. We're going to talk more about that person in just a matter of seconds. I'm just waiting to see our guests and know that we can move on. And I think once we see the guests, we'll probably pop up and go right to break, but we're going to do so. This is what we've done. This is how we've handled Black History on Dialogue with Dozie right here. That's the way we've treated it, and that's how we have moved in it. And just sit back and enjoy. We're so glad you're here. Now, this is a dialogue, and it's not a dialogue. And this is the thing that when we start out, when we had that one little Facebook Live camera on us, we had such a great response because we had so much. We had so many people who responded to us in the chat, and that's what made it a dialogue. And I'll lean over and lean forward and squinch so that I can see what you're saying, and we can respond to it and make it a true dialogue. We'll make it a dialogue indeed. I'm anxious to talk about an event that's occurring at the end of the month, but I don't want to talk about it until I want to let our guests. Speak about it. And let's bring her on now. Well, let's do this. Let's go to break. And we'll come back on the second half of the hour, and then on the second half hour we'll come back and we'll talk to we'll bring our guests on. Let's go to break. Well, GoGetYourWorld.com, man, they'll make you look good. All of your every bit of your virtual productive needs, they got them. They got you. All of your virtual production, everything that you're doing as far as computer-based or anything that you're doing, web building, they got you. You see what they've done with this show over the past 4 years. They got the same thing for you. Just look right there at their website. Hit them up. The Latoyas and Marquez, they got your bag. They're waiting to hear from you right now. MogoGigCreation.com. They got you. Tonight, I'm very proudly, and that's a term I don't use too often, our Black History Spotlight tonight is Mayor Karen Bass. We here at the Dialogue, we take pride in the fact that we have we do both genders. And last week we did Kathy Hughes, who's the CEO and founder of the media conglomerate Urban One now. Mayor Bass has been a congressperson from California for the past 10 or 12 years. And Mayor Bass was slated, she was in line to become the senator from California to receive the nomination from Governor Gavin Newsom to replace Vice President Kamala Harris, who was a senator from California. But he went in a different direction, and that's all right. Mayor Bass then sought the mayor's office in Los Angeles. She won a very, very somewhat close election, and Mayor Karen Bass became the mayor. She's into the second year of her term as mayor of Los Angeles. And one of the things she ran on and really caught my attention when we were looking to see who we were going to feature as the spotlight for the last spot in the last month. We were looking, and Mayor Bass, who ran primarily on a decision on a platform to end Los Angeles homeless situation. I looked at a segment from a news magazine, and on that segment, I saw very compassionately, very thoroughly, very, very competently Mayor Bass's solution. Would you believe she took those crates that we see people use in shipping and so forth, and stacked them in various locations across the city of Los Angeles, and went in and renovated and made them livable. And she started taking down the tents where people were living right on the major streets of Los Angeles and gave people temporary housing. And she qualified temporary can mean up to upwards of a year and a half because there's a housing crunch anyway. And of course, some of our homeless brothers and sisters are homeless now because of once the pandemic ended and sanctions were lifted from evicting people because of rent, or people were not being cast out of their homes, not being banks were not terminating their mortgages. Once that happened, people were on the street, people that you would least suspect to be living in a tent because they just had nowhere to go and they didn't have the means to live otherwise. Mayor Bass has provided these temporary housing, and I say temporary, quote unquote. She has opened the doors, and there are a lot of things that she has down the pipe, but that was her primary goal. And it's just refreshing to see someone prepare to do something, make it their pledge, and to attack it as vigorously and successfully as Mayor Karen Bass has done that. We don't know what her political fortune will go from here, but tonight the dialogue salutes Mayor Karen Bass because she's a woman of her word, and we appreciate her compassionate spirit and moving competently to work through a problem. And it's not just a problem, it's the ecology which affects us all. It's not just a problem about the economy which affects us all. It's about human beings living on streets. And I see them every day as I go out crusading for voters' rights. I see them every day living in the most horrific of ways. And I say to myself, these are God's people living like this. Mayor Karen Bass, we salute you tonight for being one of the soldiers to help end America's housing crisis, one city at a time, and all of the other great things you're going to do in your agenda as mayor and your blossoming political career. We salute tonight, Mayor Karen Bass. My guest is here, and I'm so excited that she's here with us. She is Pastor Rhonda Thomas. And Pastor Rhonda, how are you doing, ma'am?
I'm good. I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I do apologize if the lighting isn't right. I ran out of a meeting and I'm in my car. And
Oh,
so if the lighting is not right, it's only because I'm in my car. But I'm doing great, excited, and I want to enjoy this excitement while it's here.
we see you and we hear you. So we thank you. Now, that's a true leader who's going to make it however, by any means necessary. And that's what we appreciate tonight. Pastor Ron is with Pastor. You've been with us several times now. And we certainly appreciate it. Anytime we've asked you, you've been with us. Tell us what you're doing with the Black History Toolbox, and then we're going to come back and ask you to elaborate on the conference also.
Okay. Well, right now, that toolbox has gone viral, as one would say. You know that our goal was really to keep it in Florida, reach out to 500 congregations, and let's continue to teach Black history using our toolkit from our congregations. And now it's in 29 states
Mm.
and over 400 congregations, and it's constantly growing. And so I'm excited about that part of it. I really am, and definitely it is something to be celebrated.
Can you tell our audience why you label it a toolbox and not a Black History curriculum?
Okay. Um, when we first started it, I knew that um, we were not. When I say we, Faith in Florida was not equipped to create a curriculum that will fit certain ages of children. That's number one. Number two, I knew that if I really needed clergy to play an active role and totally commit, I didn't want to box them into a curriculum. Clergy don't like to be told what to do, so that would have been in a level of telling them this is what you teach and how you teach it. So we just chose a toolkit to be a area of resources where the pastor or the bishop or whoever, the apostle, wouldn't have to take the responsibility of teaching it themselves, but if it was someone in their congregation that can literally teach Black history using our toolkit as a resource where they can choose from a variety of ways of teaching, levels of teaching. It's not allocated for one age group. It could be children, adults, young adults. It was that toolkit probably gave more resources than what even some of our educators may have used from. Because number one, we know that the Black church has always taught some form of our history. Number two, we wanted it to be for the church and the unchurched. Those who may not attend church. It's not, we wanted it to be that broad. And then also, as Black people, we're very creative. So you could use it to teach it from a biblical lens. You can teach it through art. You can teach it through dance. We're just that creative where we can get a message through teaching across like no other. And I do believe because we chose just to use a toolkit, this is one of the reasons why it has been so successful because it's so many areas that you can pull from in teaching our own rich history and teaching it as it is and not in a diluted version, but teaching it as it really happened and be creative with it. And so that's one of the reasons that it was created to be a toolkit only and not a curriculum.
So, Pastor, I mean, I know it's primarily because the church, well, it used to be the center of the Black community, and we're praying. We talked about that last week. We're praying that it will return to that. But the toolkit, it's used in civic organizations and other community forums in our communities also, right?
Yes, our toolkit is being used. When I think about the different responses we got when we launched the toolkit, I got calls from chaplains that they want to teach it in the prison. Some of our white brothers and sisters who lead white congregations, they're using our toolkit, understanding that they could not teach Black history like the Black church could and can, but they're willing to teach it, but they're teaching it in a way of accountability, as well as our Muslim brothers that's teaching Black history as well. So that's just how broad this toolkit was created, where it just provides such a variety that anyone can actually use it. We have millennials that's teaching it from our toolkit. We have young people that's reading and able to teach their own peers from our toolkit.
Pastor, you said that it has gone viral, and 29 states now have adopted it. Would you? How did that process come about? Was that intentional, or they just heard what we were doing, and I say
No,
we take ownership? Uh,
no, it was not intentional. It was, you know, when we reached out, when we knew that this bill was about to pass, Faith in Florida reached out to the Board of Education to meet with Mr. Nanny Diaz. We reached out twice in Tallahassee as well as in Miami Gardens. And in Tallahassee, we had a group of clergy ready to meet to see if we could talk about, before it passed as a bill, can we talk about reevaluating it and also to share that this is just morally wrong to want to dilute the teaching of Black history because you did not trust our educators to be professional enough to operate in what they are trained to do is teach it through a curriculum but they were more concerned about it being taught in a way that it will offend white children. And so we wanted to meet. We tried everything we could, and he did not meet with us. One time he actually stood us up. And so what I did was, we're so in a defense mode when this horrible legislation is passed that might mainly impact Black and brown people. So I looked at it as that, wow, you have now given us a bag of lemons. And so instead of being defensive, we're going to take those lemons and we're going to turn it into lemonade. And that's when we hit the ground with our organizers, getting congregations only in the state of Florida. That was my only goal. It's the state of Florida that we, as the Black church, we will teach our own history. And now that you don't want to work with us, we're going to teach it raw and real. We're going to teach it in an effective way. We're going to teach it in a way where our children and others will understand that Black folks did not benefit from being slaves. And we understood that Black history still sits in our pews. And when I say that, I think of my own mother-in-law who still have her ID that she had to use just to go to Miami Beach because Black people were not allowed on Miami Beach unless you were working as a housekeeper. She still has her ID. And that right there, her own story, her own experience can be taught as a Black history moment. I think of my own self. As a first grader, my class was the first class to eat in the cafeteria.
Wow.
That's my story. That's what I can teach from. Why was my class the first class to eat in the cafeteria? Simple. In 1966, in Miami, Florida, Black children, and I was one, who could not eat in the cafeteria of the school I attended as a first grader.
Unbelievable.
And so I don't need a book to teach that.
Yeah.
I could teach it from my own experience. And then also we saw where if Black history can be diluted and erased, then that gives you more the opportunity for some to erase or dilute our future.
Wow.
And why is it so where our history is such a threat that you would want to take it out of our public school systems and higher education? It had to be, what is it that we don't know about our own selves that it should not be taught? But what they've done is they've pushed us into a space to unite as one, where it's over 17 denominations have come together as one. Black churches and white churches have come to see that this is morally wrong.
Wow. Wow.
And what you meant for evil, that's the way we see it. We've just turned it around to work in our favor. And not only will our children understand that they come from greatness, but every Black person and anyone else that wants to know about the history of Black people, when we dig deep enough, if we start studying before slavery, Black people had it going on.
Yes.
Even biblically, we never even talk about in the church how many Black people were in the Bible.
Right.
We have even allowed that whitewashing teaching to even impact the way we teach and preach in the church. It took a millennium to teach one of my Black history classes for me to find out that King James had slaves.
Yes.
And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't need to be studying from the King James version. And so that's the power that has grown from this toolkit. That's the uniting that has blossomed in a way where congregations and denominations who probably didn't even interact with one another.
So it's almost like it could be Tallahassee's worst nightmare, because one of the things, and I said it yesterday in the sermon, I wanted to make sure, and Pastor Rhonda, I know your heart. Dr. King said that we've got to learn to live together as brothers in his language of that day. We got to learn to live together as brothers, or we'll perish together as fools. So basically, he purported the biblical teaching of love thy neighbor as thyself. And during the George Floyd protest, if you look, and I would invite our viewers to go back and go back on YouTube and YouTube the videos of the protests across this nation and across the world. Even though you may have seen the Black Lives Matter banner flown in those protests, the protests were more like 80 to 20% people of the dominant culture as opposed to us.
Yes.
And I think that's Tallahassee's and every Southern suppressive state's worst nightmare, that that's where we are. Once, just like the FBI was afraid when Dr. King started speaking out against the Vietnam War. As long as he was leading protests in the South for our rights, for civil rights, that was something they could maintain. But once he started convincing the mind of little young white boys and stopping them from going to war and thinking twice about registering, that's when it became a threat. And I think that's the way it is now. And I just applaud. So other states saw what you were doing and wanted a piece of the pie, huh? Is that how that kind of evolved?
It was amazing because if it was just the southern states, I would have thought, okay, well, this is what we have in common regarding the South. But when it was California and New Jersey and Pennsylvania and Iowa, saying Iowa, I was like, okay, I knew this was something bigger than what I had ever imagined. And I didn't realize, I always thought that during an election period, all eyes are always on Florida. And I'm not talking just about the way Tupac sung it, but all eyes has always been on Florida. But when I started having conversations with these faith leaders in these other states, they were like, if it can happen in Florida, if it happens in Florida, 9 times out of 10, this can impact where I live. And that's when they really said, began to say, how can I be a part of what one would call it a movement? And I wasn't even thinking of a movement. I was thinking of my children and my grandchildren will know their history.
Wow.
That was my thought. Our children will understand that Black history goes beyond Dr. King and a parade.
Wow. Yes. Please say that. Please say that.
And so we had to be, I just felt like we must be intentional about what we teach and how we teach it. And if at the end of the day, when we talk about how Black people were impacted in certain areas and in certain journeys, if anyone is left offended, it's Black children.
Wow.
And so, but if we go further, those same Black children can understand, wow, one of the richest men that ever lived was a Black man. If you go back before slavery, they will understand that all of the things Black people invented that Black people have never gotten the full credit for. If they can understand how we built this country free, it's worth teaching. And it's not being taught in an offensive way. And if we don't teach it, and if they don't understand it, history will repeat itself in a modernized way.
Amen. Hey, Pastor, let me ask you this. And I know if anybody knows you, and I think it's one of the things that gravitates me to your leadership. So it's those terms, real and raw. You said that the toolbox equips us to teach it real and raw. Would you just give us just a brief definition of that in the context of this toolbox?
When we say real, it will be a version where it won't be diluted.
Okay.
It will be explained in ways that, for example, Black people did not benefit from being a slave. There was no benefits there. It
Mm.
wasn't where it was this long line. It was a line where you signing up. Oh, I want to reap these benefits. Can I be a slave? It wasn't that way. It will be taught in its realness. And then when I say raw, this is the way it actually happened.
Pastor, we got just about a few minutes. Would you talk about this weekend, please, ma'am?
This weekend, I'm really excited about because it will be black folks, children, men, women, um, across the state and even the country, because we got just as many people out of state that will be attending. Well, we will be under one roof to talk about how the toolkit is being used, how do we better it, what else needs to be added, how do we fellowship, how do we learn from one another, giving opportunities for vendors to be there who maybe there is a church that wants to go deeper and want a curriculum. They can literally choose a curriculum if they choose to that could be a part of their own teaching. Um, and we have some, not just black folks, it'll be those that actually registered who are not black. And it was a group of Latino, evangelical Latinos who they had a visit to Alabama and to some of the museums, and it was awakening.
Wow.
They had no idea that black folks in the South were ever treated that way until they were able to visit a museum in Alabama. And so now they too will be a part of where do we go from here? And how do we make it that much greater? Where others who have not joined or looked at the toolkit, they want to be a part. And then also giving hope to those who are teaching it. In some of our churches, we were just saying, well, we'll use this toolkit during our Sunday school classes or maybe our Bible classes. And then some saw the growth of their church by teaching Black history, where they made it a separate class. And now the Black history class is larger than the Sunday school class or the Bible class. But it
Wow.
just goes to show you that there's a thirst that has begun. Our spirits have been irritated to a place
Mm.
of I need to know more about myself and my people.
Pastor, we gonna close out on this. Are you at liberty to discuss because our conference is this weekend in Orlando? Are you at liberty to discuss when you sent one of your lieutenants to the school district to make it possible for the district to allow kids to come there as a field trip, the response that you got? And would you share the response that you shared to all of us?
Yes, I wanted to really, knowing that children were being impacted, I wanted to leave a space where we can invite children from the public schools across the state and it be used as a field trip. And I had to go through so much red tape based on the bill that was passed and the diluted version that our educators must teach from. That the attorneys from different school boards had to get involved, and then the Board of Education, who did not want to respond to me, needs to see our curriculum to see if it lines up with what can be taught. Unfortunately, I had to um, pivot from not um, bringing children as a field trip because I was not going to allow you to compare what can be taught in a church to line up with your diluted version.
Wow, wow,
And
unbelievable.
so, yeah, and it's just really, really unfortunate considering that there's a bill on the table as we speak that is going through the process of being passed, where children will in public schools will be taught on communism because it's a part of history. And I have to wonder how diluted will that be taught. And then
Mm,
secondly, it makes me ask how many of our lawmakers are actually educators who have a degree in education.
mm.
And if you will just allow our educators to do what they've trained to do, we, Faith in Florida, would not have had to take this step of pushing our churches to go back to what we were used to. And maybe it's a wake up call for us. If we stop teaching our own history in the church, it's a reminder that we need to start back.
Pastor Ron, I know what you were up against. I know you got a clock on you for this weekend. I know you're meeting around the clock. We just can't say thank you enough. You're always here when we call, and I'm grateful on behalf of my brother and I that you're with us tonight, and our producers and our staff. But I am more grateful that you are the executive director of Faith in Florida in this state, and you lead us to justice. And the thing I really like about it is that you lead us in the context of the beloved community. I'm more than blessed and honored to be a part of your staff. I'm part of your staff now. And so grateful that you came by tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation, and let's just continue to keep one another in prayer, and let's continue to teach our rich history.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
God bless.
Thank you. God bless you. Tonight's dialogue with Dozie is going to end in a different way. God bless you. We're going to see you next week. And next week, I'm taking the gloves off. It's been back and forth. Should we do this or should we not do it? No, we're taking the gloves off. We want to know, how does 50% of America support a 4-time indicted, twice impeached, 3 times sued successfully, person who made a complete clown of himself, and some of our black quote unquote conservatives in South Carolina this past weekend? We're coming at you 45 next week. That's on the dialogue. Our history is special. We did not come voluntarily, but we were stolen from the rich, fertile lands of our native land. We came in slave boats. We were treated so horrifically, packed like sardines. We worked in the scorching heat of America's Confederate southern states, harvesting cotton and tobacco and other products. Not that we would profit, but selfishly the other will profit by our labor. God never leaves us or forsakes us. He gave us leaders like Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, who gave his life so that we could be free. Rosa Parks, the mother of the civil rights movement, had to stand by and see the brutal assassinations of Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But it was not before he stood on the foot of the Lincoln Memorial and told America about a dream that he had that one day little black boys and little black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and little black girls, and we'd be able to sit at the table of brotherhood, and we would be one in the beloved community. Yeah. Thurgood Marshall showed us what a real black Supreme Court justice should look like. He, while fighting for justice and upholding the laws of this land, he also made sure that proper emphasis was given to civil and human rights. In politics, Miss Shirley Caesar led the way, being a representative serving in the Congress from the state of New York. She gave birth to Mayor Carl Stokes, being the first black mayor of Cleveland in the 60s. Tom Bradley, the first black mayor of Los Angeles. Maynard Jackson, the first black mayor of Atlanta. David Dinkins, the first black mayor of New York City. Keisha Lewis Bottoms, the first female and black female mayor of the city of Atlanta. Jesse Jackson, he showed us how to run for office, 1984, 1988. He told us to keep hope alive. Keep hope alive, we did. It was 2008 when Keep Hope Alive turned to Yes, We Can. Yes, we can, Barack Obama, turned into Yes, we did. You were elected in 2008 and came back and was re-elected as president, as the first black president in this nation, 2008 and in 2012. In athletics, well, you know, we kind of dominated that. From the boxing of Jack Johnson to the champ himself, Mr. Muhammad Ali, to the flamboyance of Floyd Money Mayweather on the diamond, from the Say Hey Kid Willie Mays to Hank Hammer and Hank Aaron. On the field, it was Big Jim Brown who did it his way. And when the man tried to tell him he couldn't take a few extra weeks to earn money his way, he resigned. He retired in the middle of a flourishing career. To Patrick Mahomes, who before age 30 now has 3 Super Bowl championships and MVPs. On the basketball court, Kareem and his very unstoppable sky hook. To Michael, who 6 times was the MVP and the champion of the NBA, having never gone to a game 4. LeBron James, who has gone to every city he's played in, from Cleveland to Miami to now Los Angeles, and brought championships to those cities. To Miss Candace Parker, who won a championship at the University of Tennessee. She won in the WNBA in Los Angeles, and most recently last year at Las Vegas with the Aces. FloJo, you remember her with her stylistic outfits that she hand designed? She would wear those outfits and go onto the track and win the track meet. FloJo showed us how to do it. You remember Serena Williams, don't you? She dominated women's tennis for the better part of 2.5 decades. In entertainment, from the voice of Miss Billie Holiday to Patty, to the voice herself, Miss Whitney Houston, to our current diva, the very contemporary voice of Alicia Keys. And who can forget the smooth, silky voice of Sam Cooke singing These Arms Are Mine? Did you see Usher the other night in the Super Bowl? He brought a different style and a different flair. Not only could he sing, not only could he dance, but the choreography was simply, as the kids would say, off the chain. And there's only been one king of pop. His name, Mr. Michael Jackson. Who can ever forget the innovative artistry of the artist himself, Prince Rogers Nelson, the Prince of rock and roll? From the Black exploration movies of Fred the Hammer Williamson to the unique cinematography of Mr. Spike Lee. We excelled on the silver screen when Sidney Poitier won an Academy Award back in the 60s, unheard of for a black man. Who can forget the cool, suave Mr. Billy D. Williams, who blazed our screens in the 70s and 80s? And you know we got Denzel, he's the man today. Miss Cicely Tyson, she set the standard for our great ones today, Miss Loretta Devine, and our very own Sister Regina King. Like Tyler Perry, billionaire music mogul, media mogul Byron Allen has shown us that we can be entrepreneurs, not just act, not just make money, not just act, not just be an athlete, but we could become billionaires and be our own entrepreneurs and own our own studios and do our own production work. Yes, we were on the face of the national news way back in the 60s in the person of Ed Bradley. You remember him on the CBS News magazine, 60 Minutes? He anchored the CBS Evening News on weekends. To today, our very own from South Florida, Miss Joy Reid, who is one of the anchors on MSNBC. She tells it like it is. And oh yeah, if we don't tell it like it is, right now, Reverend Al would say, I got you. We displayed our intelligence. Not only have we been athletes, not only have we been entertainers, but who can forget educator Marva Collins, who in the inner city of Chicago, Illinois, showed us in Chicago, Illinois, showed us how we could educate our own and how we could excel. The smooth, silky pen and the voice of Miss Maya Angelou, the rock, the river, the tree. We remember her and we appreciate her. And yes, we would never be what we are if it was not for our spiritual leaders. It's very true. We've come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in his holy word. From the father of Black theology, Mr. James Cone, to Miss Mahalia Jackson, to Pastor Shirley Caesar, Reverend James Cleveland, to the do it his own way, Mr. Kurt Franklin, to Reverend Dr. Jeremiah Wright, to Bishop T.D. Jakes. Yes, we do not let them slander our leaders. We do not let them tell us who our leaders are. We've come a long ways, and next year, this line, as Pastor Rhonda just said, this list will grow even more. So, God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who has brought us thus far on the way, thou who has by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God and true to our native land.